Good evening and welcome to the Upset Podcast. Tonight we're talking about Were You There? Faces at the Cross. Coming up next. That's right. Welcome back to the Upset Podcast. Happy Resurrection Sunday. We're happy that you have chosen to join us this evening. And we're happy to have with us some of our crew and a special guest.
Thank you very much for that. You meant okay.
What's up, guys?
Well, it's good to see you. Happy Resurrection Sunday to everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Sunday. And we can't ignore, aside from the fact that he's the only one without a red shirt, that's not to make him stand out, but we have a special guest joining us today. Who are you?
I am a son of God, a friend to man. My name is BC Wade, aka BC Wade. I am the lead servant at the Great North SDA Church, North Philadelphia. And I happen to be here, man. I'm season 5. I'm officially an upsetter, kind of low. I'm amped.
Welcome to AEC. Welcome to the Upset. We're happy to have you join us. Now, I've been hearing some rave reviews about your ministry. So we're happy to have you be a part of.
Everybody calls we see BC. Let me tell you, he is one of the finest preachers that we have. I start to say young preachers because he is young, but he's one of the finest preachers that we have, age notwithstanding. And man, welcome to the Allegheny East and welcome to my home church. North Church is the church through which I came to know God. And I will always love that church. And you're in a great place and they have a great man at the helm. So welcome, Philly. Welcome to North Church and welcome to the Allegheny East.
Man, it's good to be in the house. It's good to be in the field. Y'all, good people, great church. I'm just excited to be here. So,
yeah, it's only north from here.
It's only north from here. Oh man,
your tagline. You don't know.
The next line is an Adventist pastor was eaten by a polar bear.
Well, you guys know BC from his preaching, but I actually was quote unquote introduced to him through his music because I attend Pelk every year, and I'm always fascinated by the praise team and the wonderful music that they share. And now, if you've ever seen BC as part of a praise team, we're singing period.
Yeah,
he is in it. Okay, he is.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that guy is really feeling it. He just draws you in. And it's just such a beautiful.
When BC does praise, it is as though a hymnal had an illicit affair with a calisthenic. The energy that he exudes.
Yes.
If praising God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind is something that needs to be done, he has all of those elements at work. And and the folks at North, and they're members of BC's church that I literally have known for over 60 years.
Wow.
And they tell me that they say we think we're coming back.
Wow.
Jamon did a great job lifting that church, and it's they've had some great pastors over the years, and the legacy continues.
All right. Well, we buttered him up enough.
Yes,
You'll stay for the hour now. But now, what were you going to say, BC? I didn't want to cut you off.
I was going to say to Tally's point. I call him regularly and let him know if I am, excuse the analogy, right? If I am Steve Kerr, Jamon Jimison is Mark Jackson. if you want to follow anybody into a church, you want to follow Jamon Jimerson. That man has set us up for success. I'm just so grateful to walk behind him and what he's done. I'm still just it's still reverberating. So Jamon, thank you for being for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, we don't mention his name anymore ever since he abandoned us. We just refer to him as he whose name shall not be mentioned. I joke with Jamon about that all the time. Love that guy.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah.
Well, as in any other week, a lot has been happening in our world, in our Adventist circles, and also nationally. I definitely know.
Wow.
One of the things I can never get used to it, and these are the school shootings, the shooting at Florida State. I'm just kind of like, I don't want to get used to it, but it's like every time I see, I'm like, come on, not again. And I didn't even see the latest reports, and I know several individuals had to be hospitalized. I know at least one person was pronounced dead the last week.
I believe it was two.
Yeah, it's just so unfortunate.
Yeah, I can still remember. I think I was on air at the time when Columbine occurred, and how shocking and unimaginable that event was. That someone would go into a school and shoot kids at a school.
Right.
And now when it happens, it's just another news story, unfortunately. And we become inured to it, And,
right. Yeah. I think there were like 30 bullets or something shot, they said. So just sad.
Very.
The hot take is that we don't care. And as a country, we don't care because and you often find it in certain circles that things are non-issues until those issues become issues for them.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd rather protect my preference and my entitlement and my viewpoint, over the lives of people who are not connected to me. We don't as a country care about it.
Yeah, I'm realizing that. Yeah, because every time someone proposes some types of gun laws or anything, it's like, no, let's not. Let's not entertain that right now. That was an isolated incident. This is
Well, the president of the United States, when confronted about it, his first thing was, I am sworn to protect the Second Amendment. I mean, not human lives, but Second Amendment,
Same.
Quick question. I was super young when Columbine happened. What was the conversation around the Second Amendment around that time?
It didn't get a lot of coverage, the Second Amendment, because at that time the debate was not raging the way it is now. And people were so shocked that it happened. It was only after the investigation of Columbine and a couple of other shootings that followed quickly in its wake that the gun lobbyists. I remember interviewing LaPierre, who at the time was the head of the NRA, about guns and gun rights. People thought it was ridiculous to even think of defending gun rights, but that lobby became huge and still is. And you'd be surprised how many black male. I mean, I know a lot of black men who are part of the NRA. A lot of them.
Not surprised.
Yeah, and to be honest, they're not the enemy. It's our love affair with guns goes a lot deeper than simple violence. It has to do with this sense of I am a potential victim. Because victimizers always think that way. Bullies always think that somebody's out to get me, because they're always out to get others.
Right.
And so
true.
That's a whole nother show.
Exactly. Well, in Adventist news, no, you can't be an Adventist, but without having seen the recent storm of Ryan Day. Those who are familiar with 3ABN may recognize him, be familiar with him. And of course, he left 3ABN and chose to record a video, or actually he went live, I believe. He went live explaining why he left. A lot of it stemmed from his belief about Ellen G. White, and there were allegations of plagiarism. And we've seen several responses. I mean, it's funny how you watch one video and then suddenly YouTube says, you want to hear all of it about this stuff. So I just kept getting inundated with Mark Finley, he responds, so-and-so responds. But what are you guys making out of all this noise?
So there was a question in one of our Facebook groups that was raised. And it's an interesting question. For people who are pastors in the Adventist church, how much of Adventist doctrine do you have to believe to be kosher? Do you need to be a 99% believer of everything that we believe or teach? Is the acceptable mark at 80, right?
It's 63.4%.
Okay. Because I don't know a lot of pastors who aren't wrestling with some of the elements of our doctrinal beliefs. And I'm not sure if 3ABN platform is a place where you can exercise some of those issues or have a listening ear. And so I can understand why he would leave that environment. I did not watch the 3-hour video though. And kudos to everyone.
It was well over 2, and it was almost 3. Yeah.
It was approaching that time. But his issues that he raised aren't new ones at all.
No, not at all.
Right.
They're kind of the same stuff. I think the foundational issue that he did raise, based on the breakdown, that because I'm not watching that video, is investigative judgment in terms of salvation. Like, are we saved or are we not? And I think that's a heavy question for us to, and I say us as ministers or people within the Adventist belief, to really wrestle with. So yeah, I think it sparks a great conversation, and people who are quick to defend without understanding, I think, do more damage than good in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I had never heard of Ryan Day until this. Well, I don't do a lot of hanging around Adventist water cooler talk. My life is beyond those boundaries. But
gasp.
But when I heard about this, I looked at it. I got to tell you, I said, these are issues that have been going on for forever and a day. I mean, I don't know anybody who believes everything that everybody else believes.
So why do you think this is getting so much fodder or attention? Like,
he was so visible.
I think, yes, he is so visible. But
was he really? I never heard of him.
On 3ABN.
3ABN. Yeah. But I think so. In addition to that, I think the issue is an Adventist issue in that we don't historically do well with diversity in thought, right?
Yeah.
One were to study just the biblical examples. The disciples didn't agree on everything. They agreed on one thing: Jesus Christ, risen, buried, risen, resurrected, seated in heaven. They believed in that one thing. Aside from that, that's why they went their different ways. So I think the part of the problem, we don't have room for diversity in thought in the Adventist denomination, which is also what stunts our growth theologically, I believe. Because we're all just repeating the same talking points in this echo chamber, and we've reached the peak of our theological thought. And so it's a big deal when someone within the house says, "Oh, I think we should have an additional room, or we should paint this wall."
We engage in identity theology. What we believe makes us who we are. And we identify ourselves by distinctives that separate us from other people.
Yep.
If they wear makeup, then we don't wear makeup. If they do this, we don't do this. And so, our beliefs become relatively concretized. Yeah. And we believe as Adventists that we made one mistake, and that is back in 1844, we had the wrong day. And that everything else we've done since then has been absolutely perfect. And that needs to be challenged.
Yes, it does.
Well, great. Thanks for the dialogue. It is Resurrection Sunday, and that's right. That's something to get excited about.
I wish I was young. Unfortunately, my hip don't hop no more.
So, of course, we have to talk about this monumental event, but maybe from a slightly different perspective than we've done in the past. And so, Tally, why don't you go ahead and lead us in our discussion?
Indeed, indeed. We welcome you once again to the Upset Podcast. We welcome our new colleague and our friend, BC Nwade, who joins us. And we send out our best wishes to all of our upsetters who are busy, engaged. And also, of course, to Marlena, who was a little bit under the weather this week, and Keenan, who was probably somewhere at the Vatican conferring with leadership. He'll get me for that, everybody. But let's go right to what we want to talk about, and that is the setting of Calvary, the setting of the crucifixion, the center of all of Scripture. And we want to go right into our discussion by taking a look at some of the faces that have appeared at the cross and giving ourselves a context to understand why this is so meaningful and what it means for us, and to ask ourselves, were you there? And by asking ourselves, were you there? Of course, we talk about a man climbing that lonely hill, shouldering that cross all by himself to the point of exhaustion on a Friday, where a Black man from Africa had to be forced into the picture to assist him in carrying that cross because he could not carry it alone. And everything that I just shared with you is false. And we wouldn't be upsetters if we didn't lead out with that. And when I say everything that I said, not quite everything, but the picture that we come up with is false. And let me see if I can share why I say the picture is false. And that is this. First of all, when you talk about it, and I don't know where that little square came from, Jesus did not carry a cross. He carried what was called the patibulum. The patibulum was just the cross beam. The stauros, or the vertical beam, was already in place, and they would mount that. And so that might have weighed maybe 70, 80 pounds. It was still an extraordinarily heavy thing. And once again, there is an errant scene there that we'll get right past because the devil is messing up. So the Black man who came in carried that crossbeam as well. And here's the other thing. Nobody was walking up a hill. The Roman soldiers didn't want to carry anything up a hill. They weren't up a hill. They were right near the entrance of Jerusalem on relatively level ground. Remember, they make mention of the fact that people were talking to Jesus as he was on the cross, and they were going by. And folks were not climbing a hill on that day. They were at a place that is known in the Aramaic tongue as Golgotha. And I remember when I was over in Israel, I saw exactly why it was called Golgotha. And that is, if you take a look, it looks like a skull right there. That place, known as the place of the skull, still exists, and you can still see it. And it's not that far above level ground. But let's get past all of that and talk about the people who were around the cross, because this is what we want to discuss today. Who were the individuals, the faces at the cross? And then I'll ask a few questions about them so that we can play with the upsetters and see whether or not they have Bible knowledge or should they be fired. And we're leaning toward the latter. And then we'll give you a little background, and this will form our discussion, and we'll talk about the representation that those individuals have around the cross. With that being said, let's get into this and ask ourselves a few questions, starting with the most pivotal person beside Jesus around the cross was someone that really did not have the respect, and that is Mary Magdalene. I mean, when you think about it, women could not even be used as witnesses in court, and this woman becomes the first witness. Let's ask a true or false question, a couple of true or false questions to our esteemed panelists today who really know everything that there is to know, and that is, true or false, was Mary a prostitute? And true or false, or had she been a prostitute? Let me ask it the correct way. Had she been a prostitute? True or false? And had she anointed the feet of Jesus? What say you, gentleman and lady? Had Mary lived a life before being converted on the marketplace of flesh?
No, false.
The one woman says, no, she's no strumpet. Okay. BC, Miggs, what say ye?
I'm going to say she anointed the feet of Jesus.
That she anointed the feet of Jesus. Okay,
Yes.
go leave that other one alone. She anointed the feet of Jesus. Okay. All right. Now, the idea that she had been a prostitute was actually advanced by Pope Gregory in the 4th century. And the reason they did that was to kind of weaken her as an evangelist, kind of undermine her. In no way, there's nothing in Scripture that identifies Mary with the woman who had been taken in adultery or as being a prostitute at all. Now, the anointing of the feet of Jesus is different, but it is also false. The woman who anointed the feet of Jesus is an unnamed woman who was not. Now, remember, she's called Mary the Magdalene because she's from Magdala. The feet of Jesus were anointed in another city where everybody knew that woman, which meant that the woman wasn't from Magdala. So the truth of the matter is the only thing we know is that she was a Magdalene. They tried to sexualize her because that, and this is what men do to women all the time. If a woman has too much power, if you sexualize them, that gives you a way of thinking you can co-opt them in some kind of way. And that's what they tried to do with Mary Magdalene. Now, what we do know about her, though, is that she was delivered from 7, quote, demons. We're not exactly sure what that means. Was this an exorcism, or does it mean that she was simply somehow or another, that she might have been bothered by some ailments, and that she was one of 4 Marys? I mean, the name Mary was the most common name in all of Judea at the time. There was Mary, the mother of Jesus. There was Mary, the wife of Zebedee. There was Mary, who was of Salome, and then there was Mary, the Magdalene. Now, what she represents at the cross, though, is a person, because she wasn't there because of her faith. She didn't believe that he had been resurrected. When she didn't find him, she assumed he'd been stolen.
Right.
She was there because of her devotion. And her devotion led her beyond her fears. And at every scene, we run into people whose devotions are greater than their fears, and that leads them to grow into faith. That's one face at the cross. Let's look at another face at the cross, one that we all know, Simon of Cyrene. Now, we have with us an esteemed group of scholars who can answer these next true or false questions because they have proven themselves to be so astute in the previous go-around. Let's look at it again. Racism has always been a part of life, and there are many people who perceive that race played a part in him being chosen to carry the cross. What say you, folks? Do you think that was it, that race was part of his? But they said, look, here's a Negro, make him carry the cross.
I don't believe that was it.
No.
I think
Okay. BC says no. Tasha says no.
I don't think so.
Miguel said, what part of the Quran is that in? I didn't. Okay. Okay. All right. So you say, they say no, but he was African, and many people perceive that he was probably Muslim. Tasha, you say yes to that?
No, I was just reading what you said people say.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I agree.
Yeah. It gets very quiet around here when you start asking these questions to these astute and well-lettered scholars.
You, Tally. That's why.
I'm shocked.
I don't perceive that he was Muslim. I could be wrong, though.
Okay.
I think there is a narrative that purports him to be from Ethiopia.
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at it. Many people think that race may have played a part because he was from Cyrene, and that's really close, BC. Cyrene is a city in Libya. It's a Mediterranean city in Libya. But here's the thing about it. Have you ever asked yourself, why would a Black guy be found wandering around Jerusalem on the highest holy day of the year when Gentiles were not welcome in the city? Did he hear that there was a sale on some Afro sheen? I mean, what wasn't that led him to Jerusalem? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you look at the background, Cyrene was one of the major Jerusalem communities at the time. The Jews in Cyrene were known to be excessively patriotic to the extent of having several revolts in the city. At one point, they were even kicked out of the city. And the fact is that Cyrenian Jews were among some of the most zealous and patriotic. And look at that. We forced Tasha to leave the program. She was so upset by it. And the reason we know he wasn't a Muslim is because at the time when we meet him in AD 31, he was in Jerusalem, and Islam didn't start until the 7th century AD.
I was going to ask that question. Like, I thought Islam was a much later religion. But...
Right. I mean, if you hadn't asked that, we were going to make you give back your Islamic beard. So,
man.
So we know he wasn't Muslim, but he was a Jew. Like the rest of the Jews, he was there for the high holy days as a patriotic Jew. And later on, we find out, we see him in Mark 15 being identified as the father of Rufus and Alexander. The Apostle Paul at one point says, "Greet Rufus for me," because Rufus and Alexander became huge members of the Christian church. And at the day of Pentecost, there were a bunch of Cyrenians who were there because Pentecost was one of the 3 festivals that Jews had to come back to. So Simon was simply a Jew from another community. His race was the same as all of the rest of the people who were there. But what does he represent for us, folks? And that is this, that sometimes blind patriotism can lead you to a place where you are drafted into something that will change his life. And I have a picture of a statue that's at Oakwood where there's a gentleman, with he has a jerry curl and the whole bit. I think, that picture is a very nice one. But Black people, we try to find identity wherever we can. And so people make him an African. And Northern Africa at that point, the people were from everywhere. It was a Mediterranean community. It's like going to New York and saying, "Oh, I know the race of New Yorkers." They could be white, they could be Jewish, they could be Irish, they could be Italian, they could be, Jamaican, they could be anything. And the same thing was true about Northern Africa. Let's go to another face around the cross that all of us are very familiar with. That second thief. Let's talk about that second thief. Things are going on in the background here. True or false? Most people realize that the second thief was probably a Roman because of the way it mentions him. True or false? And that, it identifies him as a thief because he was, his crime was theft, Is that true or false? Was he probably a Roman? What sayest thou?
Looking at the trend, I'm going to say he may not have been a Roman.
He may not have been a Roman. There's a definite answer for you.
I'm going to say he was not a Roman because Romans were not crucified as it was shameful.
Now, see, this is why we go to Allegheny West to bring the very best to the Allegheny East. Romans, remember when Paul got arrested, he said, "I appeal to Rome," because a Roman citizen could not be beaten, nor could they be crucified, and so we know that he was Jewish. This person was Jewish. And his crime, when it says that he was a thief, there's several different words used. In the one place it says he was a malefactor or a criminal, but the other one that is used is a word that is used for insurrectionist. And the word that best describes him is someone willing to use violence to force an illegal will on another person. Not simply stealing, but someone who will not only take your car, but right before they get ready to drive off, they get out and come and whoop you upside the head just to let you know that they'll take your car again, and that he was that kind of person. Barabbas was one as well. And so he was a violent person who was willing to live outside of the law and to use his violence as a part of it. Now, his name traditionally has been called Dismas, and the other thief has been called Gestas. And these names are given to them in the apocryphal book, the Gospel of Nicodemus. And they were considered lestai, which is the Greek word for a person willing to use violence outside of the bounds of law. A thief, a common thief, was a kleptos, from which we get the word kleptomania. There you go. Yeah. Unmute yourselves, folks. This is, you're not in church. Okay. So what this face represents around the cross is that here's a person who did no works, yet was saved. And people say all he did was believe. No, he did more than believe. He also confessed.
Yeah.
Remember when he said to his other partner, "Look, this guy's done nothing wrong. We are up here for what we actually did. He
Right.
confessed. And he repented. He turned around. He said, remember me when you get to the kingdom. In other words, I was going to hell, but now I want to go to the kingdom. So there was confession, repentance without any works. And so that shows us that we can be saved without eating chocolates. Okay, let's move beyond that. Look, here's another face round. We got just a couple more, and then we'll get more into the discussion.
Okay.
The centurion, and I'm speaking of all of these are people who were saved as a result of their being at the cross. The centurion, true or false? He was the commander of a legion. True or false? He was probably over the age of 30, or was he a young man? What say you? How was he a younger guy or older guy? You think
He would have been a younger guy.
Younger guy. Okay. All right. Miguel says.
I'm not sure on the age part of
Okay.
centurions. Yeah.
Okay. Did he command a legion?
Not a legion.
Still less than a legion.
Legion is 6,000. He commanded
Okay.
100.
Okay, 100. Okay. And Tasha says, I'm a communication director. Don't ask me no Bible questions. You guys are very sharp. A person who commanded a legion was known as a legate, and they commanded several thousand troops. Typically, they might have even amounted to the rank of being an actual senator. He commanded a century, somewhere 100 or less troops, normally between 80 to 100 individuals. But all centurions had to be at least 30.
30.
Yeah, they now here's the deal. They had to be physically fit, under exact discipline. Whenever you see a centurion in the scripture, they are on their game. The centurion who helped build a synagogue, who told Jesus, look, I tell people when to come, they come. When to go, and they go. I mean, the centurion that Peter met. I mean, every centurion is on their game, physically fit, and they had to be Roman citizens with extreme military skill and experience. But what he represents at the cross is a person who has no inkling of making any religious decision, but because of they are simply doing their duty, providence guides them to a place where destiny claims them.
Amen.
And that's what happened to this centurion. So all of these different faces at the cross so far are there for different reasons, but they all encounter salvation. Now we go to one who thought he was already saved, Nicodemus. All right. True or false, folks? He was a Sanhedrin member, and as such, he was a Sadducee. True or false? He was wealthy. Was Nicodemus wealthy?
Well,
We'd have to see his tax returns to clarify that.
They're not releasing those anymore.
Okay. Now we know Joseph of Arimathea was wealthy because, he had the garden tomb and the whole bit. But was Nicodemus wealthy?
I mean,
The Jeopardy music is coming to an end.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Stated with great conviction and affirmation. I'm going to say, to some degree, possibly, perhaps, yes. Was he rich, Tasha? Was he somebody that, remember Tasha had that list of what kind of people she would date? Was he on the list? Was he rich?
I was thinking about, based on his reputation, it's always kind of assumed because, he didn't want to get up, but it could have been like those, like you said, Miguel, tax return. He may have gotten his tax refund, that kind of rich,
Listen to these people hedge their bets. Nicodemus was wealthy. Okay. He was well. Remember, he brought the spices and all. There's about 75 pounds of it. And the spices that he brought were the spices that you would use to bury a king. So he was a wealthy man, and it is recorded later that his wealth supported the early Christian church. Was he a Sadducee because he was on the council, or was he on the council? What do you say to that?
Pharisee.
Nicodemus, I could be so wrong, wasn't from Jerusalem.
Somebody's been watching The Chosen, I see.
Pharisee, right?
He was a Pharisee.
Yeah.
Yes.
He and Joseph of Arimathea were minority members of the council. The council was mostly Sadducees, but he was a Pharisee. Pharisees believed in the resurrection.
Yes,
The Sadducees did not, which is why they were sad, you see. Okay, we move on. Okay.
We'll write that down.
I used to notice his name, Nicodemus. Nicodemus is an absolute Greek name. He is only mentioned in the book of John. It is presumed that could not have been his name because he was a loyal Jewish person. And it has been discovered that there was a former rabbi who led the Christian church whose name was Buni Ben Gurion, that also was known as Nicodemi. And the name Nicodemus is what remained after he learned what it meant for a man who was old to be born again. Nicodemus means victory for the people. And so that is his Greek subname. His actual name was Buni Ben Gurion. And it just gives a little background to him. But what he represents is a person, and this is something we need to be really mindful of. People would criticize him. Why? Because when he met Christ, he didn't immediately jump up and join the church. And later on, when he watched things, it took him a while. He gradually grew to a place where his faith overcame his background, his presuppositions. You know, we have to learn to be patient and let people grow at their own pace. God was growing him. But most of us would have said, he ain't got no backbone. He don't know how to serve the Lord. He ain't giving no praise. He don't sing like BC. And we would have just left him out there. But, you know, his coming to Christ was gradual and hesitant, but it was essential. And we have to learn how to be patient for people. Another face of the cross. And find somebody, there was something there?
That's good.
And well, here's the last face of the cross. John the beloved, John the apostle. And, you know, the question that we ask is, we know that Jesus and John the Baptist were cousins, but were Jesus and John the apostle cousins? And, you know, did John run with all of the disciples when they all forsook him and fled? Was Jesus and John the apostle related in any way?
This is John, the brother of James?
James, yeah.
No.
Okay.
They're like besties.
They were best friends. They were close.
Yeah.
They were, you know what? They were brothers.
They were brothers?
Because he said, behold your son.
So you're taking the homiletical route.
Yes.
Okay, I see. There you go. These are some clever folks. Now, the thing is that John, strangely enough, stuck around when everybody ran. You got to give him credit for that. I mean, he was there. So all of the disciples did not forsake him and flee. And even if he did, he came back. But the best research shows that Zebedee was married to Mary of Salome, who was first cousin to Mary, the mother of Jesus. So that James and John were actually more closely related than John the Baptist was to Jesus. Wow. It is presumed. It is presumed because of that connection. So that they were, you know, so that text that Tasha read where it says, behold, thou art my BFF, does not exist in the most faithful of scriptures.
Close. You can be BFF with your family.
He was a part of the first cohort. They as everybody knew them. I mean, the fishing town where they came from was well noted by both Jew and Gentile. You know, the salting and selling of fish was a huge business. They were probably pretty well off as far as Jews in that part was. But the first disciples called were Peter and Andrew, James and John, and Nathaniel. I mean, he was a part of the first cohort. And he was known as a young man for his anger issues. It was John who, right before the crucifixion of Christ, went into a town and they didn't act like they wanted to make Jesus welcome. And he said, shall we burn up these cats? You know, that was John. He'd have made a good Adventist elder. And you know what? You don't agree with me? I will fire you, literally. You know, I mean, he gives you two choices. Do you want to be original or extra crispy?
Extra crispy.
That's John. And so he had real anger issues, quick to reject people, but take note of the fact that he becomes the one that Jesus says, as BC said before, he's the one that Jesus says, this is your mother now. I mean, the cross turned that man from a hard-hearted, excluding disciple to a warm and welcoming, loving, nurturing human being. Watching Jesus yield himself and surrender taught him, softened his heart to do the same thing and take on a mother that wasn't necessarily his. So there you have that, ladies and gentlemen. He grew to full humility and surrender. These are the faces at the cross. And as you can tell, these brilliant individuals that we have shared with you, with their true and false answers, almost all of them wrong. I mean, all of them astute, will help us now to flesh out other faces at the cross, so that when you see Mary or Simon or the thief on the cross or the centurion, or if you see John or if you see Nicodemus, you'll be able to better recognize them. What say you one? What say you all about these faces at the cross?
Well, first of all, I want to say that was an amazing breakdown of those faces that you shared. You know, and you start off with the question, were you there? You know, and so it makes, every time we think about the faces of the cross, I always imagine myself there. I don't know if you guys have that experience, but I imagine, where would I have been? Who can I resonate with the most out of the people that we're hearing about? And it's not because she's a woman, but, you know, when we talk about Mary Magdalene and, you know, the fact that she was the first to be there at the tomb. And I don't want to miss the significance of that. I really do feel like, you know, how, even we said sometimes as Black people, we try to insert ourselves everywhere. Just
yeah.
I do think that this is a situation where it was intentional that Mary Magdalene was the one to see him first. I think this is that social justice side of me, where I feel like it was significant because of the way women were viewed during that time, to give some credence to what women brought to the story. I mean, the fact that she was there, that longing that she had, the fact that she was asked to go and tell the others, I feel like that's a very significant role in ministry, and in a time where we're still debating whether women should be in certain roles and have certain spaces. I think that this is a big thing that stuck out for me, in terms of, I mean, that's big, that's huge, and I do think God wanted it to be her. That experience. That was one of the things that stuck out to me from some of the faces.
I sense, I mean, because God is not surprised by anything. And, you know, God chose a woman to be the first evangelist to the full gospel because he wanted to elevate the position of women, correct? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think, I don't know if I want to say well, I guess I would say elevate because it was almost non-existent. But I definitely think he wanted to show that they can play a significant role and should be taken seriously and listened to and valued. I see all of that taking place in this scenario.
I think the Samaritan woman would agree with that statement.
Yeah. And I imagine that the sexually ambiguous man who was the first Gentile baptized into the church by Philip might say something about that too, huh, Tosh? You muted yourself, Tosh. Either you muted yourself or the conference president.
I'm talking about Mary Magdalene.
Oh, no, I'm just using it as a precedent. I mean, you're saying that.
It's cross.
No, but I think you make a good point. I mean, there was one of the Gospels that was written, one of the Gospels, pseudepigraphical Gospels, where they talk about, well, Jesus couldn't have told Mary these things because she's a woman, and that Peter was jealous of Mary. I don't believe this, but that was a part of the church's thinking, that a woman does not have the right to bear this kind of witness. The witness of a woman was not admissible in the court of law at that time. So, yeah.
And I wonder like when she came to share, I'm sure there were a few rolled eyes in terms of, like, what's this woman talking about? I mean, I paint the scene in my head too. I mean, of course, scripture tells us, but I just can imagine. And I remember there's this shirt that says something like "Believe women," or there was it may even believe black women, but I definitely believe women, because there's this natural inkling to doubt the message that's coming from them simply because they're female.
There was another woman at the cross that is so downplayed for the role that she plays that when we see her and then we don't see her. Remember when Jesus was, after he was resurrected, he's taking a walk to Emmaus and he runs into two disciples. And one disciple's name, we know his name is Cleopas. It says he was talking to Cleopas and another disciple. And we don't know who the other disciple is. We just know Cleopas. Well, we do know who the other disciple is, because it says that when they got to Emmaus, Jesus was walking on, and Cleopas and the other disciples said, "Come to our house." They went into the house with the person, our house. The Bible tells us clearly who the other disciple is, because it says that another woman at the cross was Mary, the wife of Cleopas. Now, either Cleopas had an alternative lifestyle, or our house meant that he was walking with his wife, who had been an eyewitness to the crucifixion, because Cleopas had run away. But they don't give us her name because she's not. She's a woman.
It's not important.
She's a woman. And that's why I'm glad we have what's her name here to run this thing.
I should not laughing. Mercy.
I do have issue with the fact that you may have destroyed a lot of songs for this weekend. Can we continue singing "On a Hill Far Away"?
No, I immediately thought
old rugged. I mean,
it has no place, to be honest with you. There was no hill. It wasn't far away. It was when they crucified you. They wanted you to be right where everybody could see you. So it wasn't on a hill and it wasn't far away.
Yeah.
So on the street,
nearby on the street where you live.
Sort of pretty pristine cross, freshly carved.
The other part of it is that normally when we see him, that they would have the nail in his hand.
Wouldn't hold.
Wouldn't hold. And the other one is that they would have the feet being crossed like this with the. But we have three different examples of crucifixion, and it's always through the heel bone to the side of the cross, never one on top of the other. I mean that sounds painful, doesn't it? But it's the calcaneus, that heel bone, and it's you straddled the up beam of the cross, one heel on one side, one on the other.
And the gesture or the motion of just lifting up. That relief. Just knowing that you're eventually going to have to come back. This is why, I don't know. Did you guys watch The Passion of the Christ? I watched it years ago.
Yeah, I did.
It's one of those things I just have no desire to watch again. Like I just can't. It's too graphic for me. Like I don't want to.
People said that Mel Gibson, who was not only was he a Catholic, he was a part of a Catholic sect that's very rigorous. But if you notice, the Catholics use the crucifix, the picture of Jesus on the cross.
Right.
Most Protestants use just the cross, an empty cross. Which one do you think is correct? Or do you think they both have their place?
Well, I actually wear an open tomb around my neck.
I was going to say, that's what that's what it should be. It's not as aesthetically pleasing.
I agree. I think the idea of glorifying the agony without understanding what the purpose of the agony is. Like the apostle says, but we preach Christ and him crucified, and risen. I think we got to cut crossways to get to the tomb, that empty tomb.
I think Jason O'Rourke, actually, since we're in the conversation about Faces of the Cross, has a really incredible Bible study he does on the cross and crucifixion. And he, in great detail, he walks through the 4 Gospels and just highlights the people who are in the area around the cross, the passersby, the scribes, the Pharisees, the soldiers, and as he walks through, you can identify yourself in every one of those groups, every single one. Like, I may not have been, I'm a veteran, so I'm a soldier, or I had nothing to do with it, but I'm a passerby, or I teach Sabbath school, I'm a scribe, or whatever it is. And then once you identify yourself in the cross, he then takes a real close look at what everybody is saying at the foot of the cross. And the text says that they're all saying, "Come off of the cross, save yourself." Right? This notion that because at the end of it, he asked the question. He goes, Jesus says in John 10, Jesus says he says constantly, "You cannot kill me. No one takes my life from me. I lay it down, and when I'm ready, I pick it up again." And so if they couldn't kill him, they couldn't end his life. If even in the picture, the description of his life, you show a person who is in control of what's going on. Jesus roared in the face of death, and then he laid his head down and took his final breath. If Jesus gave up his life, then Jay asked the question, so what was all of the other stuff for? What was the beating for? What was the pulling of the beard and the spitting? If that didn't kill him, what was that for? And you kind of look to just the notion of the weight upon him to get him to come down off of that cross, to keep him from taking our stuff from us. It just highlights truly the plan of the enemy to keep him from that open tomb, right?
No, it's powerful. You made me think about Pontius Pilate, and his role in all of this. I mean, in some ways, he's kind of viewed as this political pawn, in terms of kind of being caught up. Like, he himself didn't believe this, but he's like, "This is what you guys want. This is what you get." I mean, the conversation with his wife, even saying, whatever you do, like, that man is, he's innocent. And it made me think about leadership in general. Like, when we consider ourselves a democratic society. If the people say they want this, what is a leader's role when the people want this, but it's not the right thing? How does that come into play? If you were Pilate, would you have had the same response?
Pilate has been, from the little history we have on him, he was a fickle, time-serving, feckless, politically minded person who ended up losing his job, actually. A good leader takes a stand from the point of integrity. A good leader, even if that leader says to himself, "I know I'm going to get fired for this," as some of Trump's people did. They told the truth and said, "Listen, you do what you want to do, but I can't. I'll take the heat." And I guess, and as an Adventist, I mean, we were talking earlier about this. There may be things that we may have to disagree on, and it may put us at risk with the powers that be. I remember being called on the carpet about my position on certain doctrines. More than once. Which is how I ended up with a career in radio. Truthfully, that's what happened.
I understand. I mean,
did you get a call recently? Because I submitted some documents for the examination. I just want to make sure.
You know what amazes me, though, is that at the cross is the amalgam of all of the elements of life. Our religious powers, you have this, members of the priesthood and Sanhedrin there, the political powers, and then you have the social setting. I mean, it was just a mixture of real life. I mean, it's a religious thing for us, but it was real life lived out in real time.
Yeah.
And we should all be able to see ourselves in that setting.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about Peter and Judas, Peter, that story about Peter denying Christ 3 times is like one of those things that you learn about from childhood. That's always a story of denying him before the cock crowed 3 times. And the question is, oh, if he knew that he was going to do that, then same thing with if God knew Satan was going to sin, why did he create him? It's almost like the same thing with Peter. Like, why did he he told him, Peter knew, he told him he was going to do it. Why would you still do it? And it's almost like, excuse me, we do that kind of thing all the time. Like, we are Peter, and it's like, but one of the redeeming things about that is knowing that even after doing that, he was able to see his fault. And turn. And I think that's definitely something that we can take from that, because some people feel like, I've just done too much, I've denied him too many times, there's no way I could be forgiven. We know he's the God of a second chance, but maybe not 3, 4, 5. Like, we give ourselves limits in terms of what we think God can take. And I definitely think Peter's story shows us that even when we see ourselves in that moment, we still have an opportunity to turn. And I think that that's the beautiful part of that situation. Even though, we're all mad at Peter. Like, come on, Peter, man, come on, really? Like, how you gonna go out like that? You were with him. How you gonna betray him like that to his face? But
I think both of those things, Tasha and Tally, speak to the availability of the cross, right? Tally, you mentioned earlier, the centurion had this conversion process just by being there doing his job, right? And the fact that the cross is indeed not on a hill far away, right? But in the common places where even the passerbyers can, if you can just gaze upon the cross, you have an opportunity to have your life turned around, right? And even if you are not focused on it at the time, Tasha, the thing I love about the Peter narrative, right, is the text says that Peter is warming his hands by a charcoal fire. That those 2 words are only used twice in the Bible, the entire narrative. The second time it's used is Peter after he swims to Jesus on the shore, and Jesus is standing there with fish at a charcoal fire. Even in the redemptive work of Jesus in the life of Peter, Jesus has to take him in mind, in thought, and in deed back to the cross. So it's like there is this there is this redemptive. It's for everyone. It's and if you can just glimpse it, right? Even if you've gone past it, Jesus says, no, my work in your life is to bring you back to it so you can behold it and be transformed again.
That you got to admit, I mean, really, I feel sorry for Allegheny West. I mean, I feel sorry for them, man.
Amen.
That was homiletically splendid there.
I'm especially considering all that's transpired over the last month, as it pertains to various religious moments, whether that's Marvin Sapp and Shut the Door, or even this past weekend, what is his name? I forgot his name. The church in Atlanta where he used
Bryant?
No. Philip Mitchell.
Yeah,
Philip
2819 Church.
2819 Church, where he was trying to tell them to submit to authority. So we have these instances of people who were just beloved like 2 weeks prior to them being publicly scrutinized, right? And within this narrative, this entire the events that unfold within the Bible, we kind of see the same thing. And I've always wondered, man, how can you want to crucify? We're not even talking about the religious establishment. We're talking about the people now. The person who can provide free medical care, even if you're not believing in his message about the kingdom, you got to at least see the benefits of him being alive. He is healing people, casting folks out. He is changing economies. He is elevating women. He is doing all of these things for your people, but yet you are satisfied with him losing his life, not going to prison, not sending him away for a little bit. We're talking about losing his life. You hail him and you're talking about Hosanna forever. And then in a short few days, and I'm wondering what transpired. Like, what were they told?
Oh, that,
to kind of change radically within a few days. And I'm saying this, kind of talking out loud. I'm close the door. I'm wondering if it's still happening within and among us, that there is a fatigue, not of just religion, but of God. Like go ahead, BC.
So the issue with, so Hosanna, right? People often describe it to be like a name for God. It's not. Hosanna means save us, right?
Mm-hmm. Save us now.
Save us immediately.
Yeah.
And I think in that lies the problem. When you're confronted with the fact that God's will for your life is very often different than your perception of what his will should be, you very often rebel against God. And so when the people saw him on Sunday and said, oh yeah, he about to get the sword, he about to come in here and take Rome down, he about to, do all the things that we need him to do in our lives. It was like, yes, let's make this thing happen. Lay down the palm tree, yeah. And then we see this, who we thought subjecting himself, not fighting back, not pushing back, not snatching red hats off people's heads and all these things. Then it becomes, even to a lesser degree, John is in prison and John hears word that Jesus is drinking and eating and partying, and John sends his servants and says, hey, are you the one that we're waiting for? Should we look for another one? Right? So I think when you wrestle with how God often appears versus how you think he should appear, the fight should then become the fight to not want to dethrone him and place yourself there. And we very often lose.
I can understand John's confusion or disappointment because Jesus takes a very different road than John in his ministry, right? I can get that. I can get that the people are disappointed that Jesus doesn't mount this attack against the Roman Empire. I can get that frustration that it doesn't show up. And I think we all can understand when God shows up, but he doesn't always show out. Right. We can through various moments in our lives, we can understand the misalignment between what I want and what God is going to do. Right. I don't understand how you can say, save us now, and then go to the one you want to be saved from and say, kill him now.
First of all, I've never had a prouder moment than to listen to two young preachers wrap their exegetical and homiletical skills around a biblical pericope like these two, man. The work is in safe hands. I can lay down now and close my eyes. But the word here, and I got this from a psychologist friend of mine, the most powerful element of persuasion in human life is disillusionment. It is when I perceive, and this is what happens in marriage, and I say this with a level of shame, actually, about as a divorced man, when what you think is going to happen doesn't happen. It doesn't matter what other realities exist.
Mhm.
If I'm holding on to the illusion that I have harbored and nurtured and pronounced and fed, and it doesn't happen. If I thought we were going to have 3 kids and we only have 2, if I living with the illusion that has died and now having to embrace disillusionment, rather than face that, I'd rather kill you.
Mercy.
I'd rather kill the marriage
Woo.
than to live with the disillusionment. I'd rather, and when he did not act as they thought he would, it didn't matter that he had raised the dead and that he had healed the sick and given sight to the blind. He had failed their illusion. And when when Moses, took us through the Red Sea, you gave us manna, we ain't in the promised land yet, we got to kill you because my illusion has failed. And that is what the cross of Calvary takes us to. What do you do when what you perceive God was supposed to do does not get done? Can you live with that mystery?
That's the setup for a sermon, Niggy. Write it down. That's the homiletical question for a monster sermon. Write it down. That's all I'm saying. What do you do?
What do you do? Mercy. Well, listen, what a privilege to have this discussion with you all. I think definitely seeing these various perspectives, and we start off with the question, were you there? And we're ending with the question, what do you do? But it's definitely something for us to contemplate, particularly during this time. Miguel and I were talking about this before we started, how, well, at least when I was growing up, there wasn't much fanfare in the church about Resurrection Week, or Passion Week. I mean, we have a service on Sabbath, obviously, but that was it. But I feel like we've now transitioned to, we're having week-long celebrations and services, and it's like, it almost, what took us so long
aren't you guys having something in white this?
On Wednesday there was a white out at Germantown. It was a great service.
I saw the advertisement with Outcasts, So Fresh and So Clean as your background music. But please continue.
Classic work. Classic work.
But no, it's so interesting now. Even trying to share from a communication standpoint all the things that our churches are doing. I'm like, wow, this wasn't even a thing just a few years ago. And I think it's interesting that we've now, we're really embracing this week, this celebration. And more than we ever have before. I don't want to open up another discussion, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that there has been a shift in how we celebrate.
Another discussion.
My final word, it should be remembered that while we celebrate that the first Easter sunrise service could have had one chair to accommodate the crowd. It was only Mary.
Were you there?
Yeah.
Well, in my final act of symbolism, what can wash away my sins?
Nothing.
It can make me whole again.
Oh, she took off the red glasses and put on the clear glasses.
He is risen, and I am grateful. Amen.
I join you in that.
Amen.
You need to get me a red shirt. Y'all it's in the mail.
Send that man a shirt.
Yes,
I checked the box today.
Yeah. And ABC, it was a pleasure to have you, and I hope it's not the last time.
I hope not too. I hope I can, come in and make some noise. I do want to plug, if I can, shameless.
Yes, please do.
Our very own Pelk Praise Team has released music, All Things Well. You can get it anywhere you find music. It's our first single, written by Damian Chandler and myself. By Laurent Bernat. It's a monster of a song, and we're just so grateful that it's here. It's done. Yeah.
Yay! Congrats.
Excellent.
It's excellent music. Love it. Check it out. We'll try to, once we get the link to it, we'll put it in the description.
Dope stuff.
So that people can click on it. Thank you. Thank you all so much for the discussion. And we look forward to even more more discussions next week. So we'll see you back here. Same time, same place. Have a great week, everyone.
Happy Resurrection Sunday, everybody.
Peace.
Happy
All
Resurrection.
right.